The twin suns of Zithera burned high above the city of Kalor, casting golden light over the massive structure known as the Arena of Blood and Honor. It stood like a mountain of metal and stone, its walls alive with roaring crowds. Every species in the Empire had gathered to witness the Grand Championship. It was not only entertainment, it was a tradition that decided who ruled the sectors of the outer reach. Inside, the air shook with the sound of drums, cheers, and the smell of plasma smoke. Giant banners waved high, each carrying the sigil of a noble house. And on the highest balcony, sitting upon a crystal throne, was Princess Virel Zithera, heir to the Empire. Virel was young but already known across the stars, tall, elegant, her silver skin glimmering under the suns, her eyes sharp as cold flame. She wore armor made of dark metal and fine silk, symbols of her royal lineage. Her expression was calm and proud, showing no emotion as warriors fought to impress her. She had seen thousands of battles, hundreds of alien champions. None had ever surprised her. The latest fight ended with a loud roar as a massive Kargoth beastman crushed his opponent's skull. The crowd cheered wildly. The announcer's voice echoed through the arena, magnified by energy amplifiers. And the winner, Growthar of Kargoth. The victor raised his forearms and roared. Blood dripped down his claws. Virel didn't even blink. Another fight. Another meaningless display of muscle. She turned her gaze away. Her advisor, a thin, blue-skinned noble named Raylan, leaned closer. "Your Highness, the next combatant is quite unusual." "Unusual?" she asked without much interest. "Yes," Raylan said. "A prisoner from the human colonies. The last survivor of the resistance on Orion Delta." Virel raised an eyebrow slightly. "A human here? In our arena?" Raylan nodded. "Yes, Princess." The High Council thought it amusing. "He was captured after destroying 2 scout mechs, with his bare hands, they say." The princess gave a short laugh, elegant but cold. "With his hands? Humans have fragile bones. This should be quick." The drum started again. The crowd's roar grew louder. Everyone loved a hopeless match. The arena gates opened, and 2 figures stepped out. The champion Growthar, armed with twin plasma blades, and opposite him, a human. He looked out of place in every possible way. Captain Elias Ward, tall, broad-shouldered, covered in dirt and scars, wearing only tattered pants and no armor. His bare feet pressed against the rough sand of the arena floor. His hands were bound at first, then cut free by the guards before the fight. He rolled his shoulders slowly, breathing deep, his face calm. The crowd laughed. Some even threw things at him. "A human. This will be short. Look, he has no claws." Virel's gaze stayed on him longer than she expected. There was no fear in his eyes. No trembling. He didn't even look at the crowd. His attention was fixed only on his opponent. She tilted her head slightly. Strange, she thought. He knows he cannot win, yet he looks as if he already has. The announcer's voice thundered once more. "Combatants ready? Fight, for honor and blood." The Kargoth warrior roared and charged like a monster. Each step shook the ground. His plasma blade sliced through the air with glowing arcs of green light. The human didn't move at first. He watched, waited. His eyes followed every motion like a hunter watching prey. The first swing came fast, too fast for most eyes to see. But Elias slipped to the side at the last second. Sand sprang under his feet. The crowd gasped. The blade missed by inches. Growthar growled and attacked again, faster, stronger. Again, the human dodged. Virel leaned forward slightly in her seat. "He's hit fast," she murmured. The next moment, Elias struck. He stepped inside the alien's reach and drove his fist into Growthar's ribs. There was a loud crack. The huge alien stumbled back, shock on his face. The crowd fell silent. A human had hurt a Kargoth warrior, with nothing but a punch. Growthar screamed in rage and swung wildly, both blades slashing like windstorms. Sparks flew as they hit the arena floor. Elias ducked, rolled, and grabbed a handful of sand. He threw it into the alien's eyes. The creature roared, blinded. In that brief moment, the human leapt up and drove his elbow into Growthar's neck with brutal precision. Another crack. The alien fell to one knee, choking. Elias grabbed one of the fallen plasma blades, not to kill, but to throw it away, disarming his opponent. Then he stepped behind the Kargoth, locked his arm around the alien's throat, and pulled with terrifying strength. The arena echoed with the sound of bones breaking. Silence followed. Total shocking silence, then thud. The mighty Growlthar fell to the ground, lifeless. Elias stood over him, chest rising and falling, blood on his hands, eyes calm. He looked at the crowd, not with pride, not with arrogance, but with quiet defiance. No one cheered. No one laughed now. Even the announcer hesitated, his voice shaking. The victor, the human prisoner, Elias Ward. For the first time in the history of the arena, a human had defeated a champion of Zethera, barehanded. Princess Viril sat still, staring down at the sand below. Her mind raced. She had seen warriors with strength, skill, and speed, but never like this. He had fought like no alien could. No wasted movements. No blind rage. Just purpose, impossible, whispered Raylan beside her. He should not have survived even one strike. Viril didn't answer. Her eyes were fixed on Elias. He wasn't celebrating. He wasn't smiling. He simply looked around as if searching for the next threat, or the next way out. When his gaze met hers across the vast arena for a single heartbeat, the world seemed to still. It wasn't arrogance. It wasn't challenge. It was something else. Resolve. For a reason she couldn't explain, her heart skipped a beat. The guards rushed in to surround the human. They raised their rifles, but he didn't resist. He allowed them to chain his wrists again. As they dragged him toward the gates, he glanced once more toward the royal balcony. His eyes met Viril's again, calm and unbroken. For the first time in her life, the princess of Zethera felt something that no alien warrior had ever made her feel. Respect. The crowd finally found its voice and began to roar, some in fury, others in disbelief, and a few in awe. The name of the human spread through the stands like wildfire. Elias Ward, the bare-handed human. He killed Growlthar. But Viril's mind was elsewhere. She leaned back in her throne, eyes thoughtful. Your Highness, Raylan said carefully, shall we have him executed? The council will demand it after this. Humiliation. Viril's lips curved into a faint, unreadable smile. No, not yet. Bring him to the palace. I want to see this human myself. Raylan looked shocked. You wish to speak to him? I wish, she said softly, to understand what drives a creature to fight like that. As the suns began to set, the arena emptied, leaving behind the scent of smoke and blood. Far below, Elias Ward sat in his cell, silent, his knuckles raw. He didn't know that someone, the most powerful woman on the planet, was already thinking about him. And up in her crystal palace, Princess Viril watched the replay of his fight again and again on her holoscreen. Each time she felt that same strange pull in her chest. He was unlike any being she had ever known. A warrior without armor, a soldier without fear, a human and somehow more than that. That night the princess couldn't sleep. For the first time in her life, something, or rather someone, had shaken her world. The next morning on Zethera began with storm clouds. For the first time in months, the suns were hidden behind gray skies. To most, it felt like nothing, but to Princess Viril it felt like a sign. The arena of blood and honor was silent now, but its echo still haunted the city. Everywhere she went, Viril heard whispers about the human, the one who fought with nothing but his hands and defeated a Kargoth champion. Some called it luck. Others said it was impossible. But everyone was talking. Even the royal guards who had seen countless wars spoke of him in quiet tones as if his name carried a strange weight. Viril didn't like confusion. She was a ruler, trained to think in cold logic. But this human Elias Ward didn't fit any logic she knew, so she decided to see him again, not as a prisoner, but as a puzzle to solve. The human's cell deep below the royal palace was a cold prison made of obsidian walls and glowing blue shields. Inside one of the cells sat Elias Ward. He was chained to the floor, but his posture was straight. His breathing was steady. He didn't beg. He didn't shout. He simply waited. When the doors opened, Viril stepped inside, flanked by two guards. Her royal cloak trailed behind her, the sound of her boots echoing softly on the metal floor. Elias looked up. His eyes met hers instantly. Calm, sharp, unafraid, you are the princess, he said. His voice was deep, quiet, but carried a natural authority. I am, she replied. Princess Viril of House Zethera. You may call me your highness. He gave a faint smile. I'll stick with princess. Easier to remember. The guard stiffened, shocked by his tone. No alien had ever spoken to the princess like that. Viril raised her hand slightly. a signal for silence. She wanted to hear him speak. "You fought yesterday," she said, her voice calm. "You fought a creature twice your size, armed with plasma blades, and you survived. Tell me, human, how did you do it?" Elias tilted his head slightly. "Training. And necessity." "Necessity?" she repeated. He nodded. "Where I come from, we don't fight for entertainment. We fight because if we don't, we die. The difference between me and your champion wasn't strength. It was reason." Virel frowned slightly. "Reason?" "He fought for pride," Elias said simply. "I fought to live. Pride dies fast. Survival doesn't." The princess stood silent for a moment, thinking. His words were simple, but they carried weight. She had seen so many warriors in her life, all proud, all sure of themselves. But none had spoken of fighting this way. She asked, "Were you a soldier?" "I was," Elias said. "Captain of the 3rd Human Frontier Corps, until your empire wiped us out." Her gaze softened slightly. "You fought against my people?" "I fought for mine." His tone wasn't bitter. It was calm, matter-of-fact. Something in her chest tightened. She had expected hatred or fear, but instead there was just quiet truth. After a pause, she turned to the guards. "Leave us." The guards hesitated but obeyed. When the door closed, Virel stepped closer. She studied his face carefully. His features were rough, scars, sunburned skin, eyes like cold steel. But there was something about his presence that made her feel uneasy, almost small. "You're not afraid of me," she said. He looked at her. "Should I be?" She almost smiled. "Most are." "I'm not most." Virel found herself smiling too, just a little. "No, you are not." The demonstration later that day, Virel held a council meeting. The nobles and generals filled the throne room, their faces full of anger and disbelief. "The human must be executed," one shouted. "He humiliated the Empire." "He's dangerous," said another. "The people whisper his name. They're calling him the bare-handed human." Virel listened quietly, her fingers tapping against her throne. When they finally stopped shouting, she stood. "You fear him," she said softly. "Of course we do," a general replied. "He killed a champion without weapons." Virel's eyes glowed faintly, the sign of her alien power. "Then let us see if it was luck." Gasps filled the room. "You can't mean—" "I do," she interrupted. "Tomorrow the human will fight again, this time against one of our own elite guards. If he wins again, we will decide his fate then." The second fight the next day, the arena roared once more. This time the crowd was larger. Every noble, every soldier, every citizen wanted to see the human who broke their pride. Elias Ward stood once more on the sand floor, barehanded as always. The chains had been removed, but heavy guards stood close, ready to act. Across from him stood Commander Vrax, one of Zethera's most skilled warriors, tall, armored, and armed with a staff made of plasma energy. From her royal balcony, Virel watched silently. Her heart beat faster than usual, though she didn't know why. The announcer's voice thundered, "Commander Vrax of Zythera versus the human, Elias Ward. Fight for honor!" The commander spun his weapon, glowing energy crackling through the air. Elias just rolled his neck slowly and raised his hands, open palms, relaxed stance. The moment the signal was given, Vrax attacked first, a blur of speed and light. The plasma staff swung down in a deadly arc. Elias ducked, the weapon slicing through the air above his head. He stepped forward and drove his palm into Vrax's chest, hard enough to make the armor dent. The crowd gasped. Vrax snarled and struck again. This time, Elias couldn't dodge completely. The energy staff grazed his shoulder, burning through skin. He gritted his teeth but didn't fall. Instead, he grabbed the end of the staff and twisted, using his body weight. Vrax's weapon flew from his hands, clattering across the arena floor. Before the commander could recover, Elias struck again. A low kick to the leg, a sharp elbow to the ribs, and then a punch that sent the armored warrior sprawling. The fight was over in seconds. Silence fell again. The only sound was the faint hum of the plasma weapon lying useless in the sand. Virel stood slowly. Her heart pounded in her chest. Elias breathed heavily, his body covered in sweat and blood, but his eyes were alive, focused, unbroken. Then he did something no one expected. He turned toward the royal balcony and bowed his head, not as a servant but as a warrior giving respect to another. The crowd didn't know how to react. Some began to cheer. Others shouted in anger. But one thing was clear. The human was no longer a joke. He was a symbol, A growing realization. That night, Virel walked alone through the palace gardens. The stars of Zathera glimmered above, reflected in the silver pools of water. Yet her thoughts were far away, back in the arena, watching him move like a living storm. Her mind replayed every motion. The focus in his eyes, the strength in his body, the calm in his expression even as blood dripped from his arm. She had studied hundreds of alien fighting styles, but what he did was different. It wasn't about form or tradition. It was about instinct, experience, and pure will to live. She whispered softly to herself, "Humans, what are you really made of?" A voice behind her answered, "Curious, aren't you, Princess?" It was Raylan, her advisor. He bowed respectfully. "You saw it too," she said. "He fought like an animal?" Raylan finished. "Yes, but also like a survivor." "I've never seen such focus," Virel nodded. "He doesn't fight for glory. He fights to exist." Raylan's eyes darkened. "And that is why he's dangerous. Such creatures cannot be controlled." Virel looked up at the stars. "Perhaps not. But maybe. They can be understood." The conversation later, she went back to his cell again. This time she dismissed the guards entirely. Elias was sitting cross-legged, his injured shoulder bandaged. When he saw her, he smiled faintly. "Back again?" he said. "I wanted to ask you something," she replied. "Why did you bow today?" He looked thoughtful. "Respect. You gave me a chance to fight. Not many would. You killed another of my best soldiers." "I didn't kill him," Elias said quietly. "I stopped when he was beaten." "Killing isn't always victory." That made her pause. "You could have ended him." "Yes," he said. "But I didn't need to." Virel studied him for a long moment. "On my world, mercy is seen as weakness." "Then your world is blind," Elias said softly. "Mercy takes more strength than rage ever will." For a moment, neither spoke. The only sound was the hum of the cell shield. Then Virel asked, almost whispering, "Do all humans think like you?" He chuckled. "No. Most don't. But we all learn the same lesson eventually. If you want to survive, you have to fight for more than yourself." She didn't understand what that meant fully, but she felt its truth. His words carried the same energy as his actions, quiet but powerful. As she turned to leave, she hesitated at the door. "Tomorrow," she said, "the council will decide your fate." Elias shrugged lightly. "Then I'll face it." Like any fight, she looked back once more, her expression unreadable. "You are not what I expected, human." "And you," he said with a faint grin, "are not what I feared." When she left the cell, Virel's thoughts were a storm. For the first time in her life, the Princess of Zathera wasn't sure if her people were truly as strong as they believed. Because that day, a human had not only defeated her warriors. The morning sun rose slowly over the shining towers of Zathera's capital. The city was still buzzing with whispers about the human warrior. Everywhere people spoke his name in disbelief. Elias Ward, the bare-handed human. He defeated Commander Vrax. How can a creature from a dying world fight like that? The story had spread far beyond the arena walls. For the first time in history, the proud Zytherans were questioning their own strength. But inside the palace, Princess Virel sat alone in her chamber, watching the recordings of his fights again and again. Each time she noticed something new. A movement, a small breath, a calmness before each strike. He wasn't fighting like an animal. He was fighting with discipline, purpose, and intelligence. She whispered to herself, "No wasted motion. No fear, every strike precise. He fights like someone who already knows pain." Her thoughts were interrupted by a soft knock on the door. It was Raylan, her royal advisor. "Your Highness," he said, bowing. "The council is waiting. They will vote on the human's execution today." Virel stood slowly, her expression unreadable. "Let them wait a little longer." Raylan frowned. "Princess, this creature has become dangerous." The soldiers whisper about him. The citizens admire him. If we let him live, it might inspire rebellion. Or, she said calmly, it might inspire respect. He looked uneasy. Respect for a human? Virel turned her eyes toward the window, watching the suns rise higher. Perhaps our pride has blinded us too long. The visit ignoring the council's impatience, Virel went down to the palace dungeons again. The guards at the gate looked surprised but opened the doors immediately. When she stepped inside the cold chamber, Elias was sitting quietly as always, his back against the wall. He looked tired but strong. His hands were wrapped in fresh bandages. The moment he saw her, he gave a faint nod. "Princess?" "Captain Ward," she greeted. Her voice was softer today, less formal. "I hear you have become a legend among my people." He smiled slightly. "Didn't mean to. Just trying to stay alive." "That is exactly what confuses me," she said as she walked closer. "You are surrounded by enemies, trapped on a world that despises your kind. Yet you remain calm. You don't show fear." Elias leaned his head back against the wall. "Fear doesn't help. When you've lost enough, you learn that staying calm keeps you alive." Her expression softened a little. "You've lost people?" He looked at her then, really looked, and in his eyes she saw the weight of memories. "Everyone," he said quietly. "My unit, my home, my world." For a long moment, silence filled the cell. Then Virel said softly, "I'm sorry." Elias raised an eyebrow. "That's new. An alien princess apologizing to a prisoner?" She gave a faint smile. "Perhaps not all Zetherans are the same." He chuckled softly. "Maybe not." Questions and truths. Virel paced slowly, her silver cloak brushing the floor. "Tell me, Captain, how are humans able to fight like you do? You are weaker, slower, yet somehow you win." Elias thought for a moment. "Because we have to. When your back is against the wall, when no one comes to save you, you learn to fight with everything you have. Not strength, not technology. Just will." "Will," she repeated. He nodded. "You can break a body. You can cage a man. But you can't kill his will, not unless he lets you." Virel stopped pacing. His words struck something deep in her heart. The Zytherans had always believed that power came from strength, from muscle, from weapons, from fear. But this human spoke of a strength that came from inside. "You speak like a philosopher," she said. He smiled faintly. "No, just a soldier who's seen too much." She hesitated, then asked the question she'd been avoiding. "Do you hate us?" Elias looked thoughtful. "I did once, when I saw what your empire did to my people. But hate doesn't change anything. It just burns you from the inside." His calm honesty disarmed her more than anger ever could. Virel sat down on the small bench across from him. For a long while, neither of them spoke. The silence wasn't cold, it was thoughtful. Finally, she said, "You confuse me, human. You fight like a beast, but you speak like a sage." He grinned. "Maybe we're both." That made her laugh softly, a sound even she wasn't used to hearing from herself. The council's decision later that day. The council gathered in the great hall. The nobles filled the chamber, their armor gleaming, their eyes filled with pride and suspicion. Virel entered with calm grace, but her heart was heavy. "The human must be executed," one elder said immediately. "He's an insult to the Empire." Another shouted, "He has corrupted the soldiers' minds with his defiance." Virel raised her hand and silence fell. "You all speak of fear," she said. "But tell me, on what exactly do you fear? His fists? His defiance? Or the truth that one human has shown us something our entire empire has forgotten?" The room stirred uncomfortably. "What truth?" another counselor asked. "That strength without honor means nothing," she said firmly. "That courage does not come from species or bloodline. It comes from within." The nobles exchanged angry looks. "He's dangerous, Princess." "If you will not order his execution, then we must." Virel's voice turned sharp. "Enough, he will not die." "Not today." A murmur of shock rippled through the room. She stood tall and proud. "I will take personal responsibility for him. He will remain under royal guard. And I will continue to study him, to understand what gives his kind such strength." Raylan stepped forward, his face pale. "Princess, you are risking everything. The council will not forgive this." Virel turned to him. "Then they can challenge me in the arena." Her tone left no room for argument. A bond begins. That night, Virel returned to the dungeons again. Elias looked surprised to see her so soon. "Back already?" he asked. "The council wanted you dead," she said. "I figured," he replied. "I'm still breathing though, so I'm guessing you stopped them." She nodded. "You're under my protection now," he chuckled. "Protection or observation?" "Both," she admitted. He smiled. "Fair enough." Virel sat down again, this time closer to him. There was something strange about being near him, something unsettling but not unpleasant. His presence felt alive, real, grounded. "Tell me about your world," she said softly. Elias looked down for a moment, as if remembering something far away. Earth was beautiful. Blue skies, green forests, oceans that went on forever. We fought, yes, but we also built. We dreamed big. Even when everything fell apart, we never stopped hoping. Hope, she repeated. Your people value that? He smiled faintly. It's all we ever had. Varel looked thoughtful. My people don't hope. We expect, we conquer, we control. And that's why you'll eventually fall, Elias said gently. She blinked in surprise. Fall? Every empire does. Pride breaks before will does. His words echoed in her mind like thunder. For a long time she couldn't answer. She just watched him, this strange, wounded human who spoke truths her entire court was too afraid to say. An unspoken connection days passed. Varel continued visiting him in secret. They talked for hours about war, honor, loss, and the strange nature of humanity. Elias never begged for freedom. He never showed anger. He just spoke honestly, sometimes even humorously. It was the first time in her life that Varel felt equal, not as a ruler but as a person. Once, as she stood to leave, Elias said quietly, "Why do you keep coming back, princess?" She paused at the door. "Because you make me question things I thought I already knew." He smiled softly. "That's dangerous." She looked back at him, her silver eyes glowing faintly. "Maybe, but maybe it's what I need." For a brief moment their eyes met, two different worlds staring into each other. And though nothing was said, something silent passed between them. A growing respect, and something more fragile beneath it. The spark of change that evening. Varel stood on her balcony overlooking the city lights. The stars above reminded her of what Elias had described. The endless skies of Earth, a place she had never seen. Her thoughts were a storm of doubt and curiosity. She had been raised to believe Zitherans were superior in every way. But now, she wasn't sure anymore. She whispered into the wind, "Why does one human make me question everything?" Down below, the city glowed with lights, but for the first time she didn't feel proud of it. She felt distant. In his cell, Elias sat quietly, looking at the ceiling. He knew she was fighting a battle of her own, not with weapons, but with truth. The night air over Kalor was thick with tension. Fires burned in the outer districts as the first signs of rebellion spread across the city. Citizens who had long suffered under the rigid rule of the Zitharan Empire were taking to the streets. The humans' victories in the arena had inspired more than awe. They had sparked hope. Princess Varel stood in the crystal balcony of her palace, gazing down at the city below. The winds whipped her silver cloak around her shoulders, but she hardly noticed. Her mind was focused on a single question. How much longer could she maintain control? Raylan, her advisor, appeared beside her. His blue-skinned face was tight with concern. "Your Highness, this uprising grows faster than the guards can handle. The Council will demand your decision soon. They will not tolerate hesitation." Varel didn't speak at once. Her thoughts were with Elias. The human had become more than a prisoner. He had become a symbol, a spark that could ignite change. And she realized that keeping him chained, no matter what the Council said, could cost lives. She turned to Raylan, her voice calm but firm. "Prepare my personal guards. We leave tonight." "I'm taking him with me." Raylan's eyes widened. "Your Highness, that is impossible. The palace is surrounded. Soldiers will not allow you to take him." "I know," Varel said. "That is why it will be done quietly." The plan inside the cold dungeon. Elias sat quietly, sharpening a small piece of metal he had found among his chains. His bare hands moved with precision and care, even in the dim light. When the doors opened, he looked up, expecting the usual guards. Instead, Princess Varel stepped in. She closed the door behind her and looked directly at him. "Captain Ward," she said softly, "I am giving you a choice. You may stay here and face certain death by the Council's orders, or you may come with me and escape the city." Elias studied her silently. "You risk yourself for me?" he asked, incredulous. "I risk myself for the city," she said, "and perhaps for your kind as well. But mostly, I risk it because I believe you deserve the choice." He hesitated. His instincts screamed caution, yet something in her voice and the quiet determination, the courage, made him trust her. He nodded. "I go with you." Varel allowed herself a small smile. "Good. Then we must move quickly. The palace will be under lockdown within the hour." The escape begins. The corridors of the palace were eerily quiet. Guards patrolled in predictable patterns. unaware that the princess and the human were slipping past them. Virel led the way, moving swiftly but silently, her keen eyes spotting every danger. Elias followed closely, using his experience as a soldier to anticipate every patrol and trap. For a moment, they moved like a single unit, predator and partner, human and alien, navigating a palace designed to kill. They reached the armory, where the remaining plasma rifles were stored. Elias paused. "Do we take weapons?" Virel shook her head. "No, we will rely on speed and skill. Your hands have already proven themselves," he nodded. "Then let's go." The outer gates were heavily guarded. Virel's personal guard waited just beyond, ready to fight their way out if necessary. Together they created a distraction, a small fire in the east wing and alarms blaring through the palace. As chaos erupted, Virel and Elias slipped through the shadows, moving toward the starlit sky and the freedom it promised. The confrontation. They were almost at the exit when a squad of elite palace soldiers appeared, weapons raised. The human instincts that had kept Elias alive through countless battles kicked in immediately. He stepped in front of Virel, fists raised. The first soldier lunged with a plasma blade. Elias dodged, twisting his body with a speed that seemed impossible for a human. He grabbed the soldier's arm mid-swing and flipped him to the ground with a loud crash. Another soldier attacked from behind. Elias pivoted, striking with a precise elbow that stunned him, and then a palm strike to the chest sent the soldier sprawling. Virel moved beside him, her own skills emerging. Though trained to rule, she had been trained in combat as well. She disabled two guards with swift calculated strikes. Using their momentum against them, together, they were unstoppable, a living testament to human adaptability and alien precision. Finally, they reached the outer gates. Virel waved to her personal guards, who engaged the remaining palace soldiers to give them time. A transport ship awaited, engines humming softly, hidden among the palace gardens. Elias helped her onto the ship first, then leapt in himself. The gates of the palace were behind them, filled with chaos, shouts, and fire. Virel exhaled slowly, gripping the controls. "Hold on," she said. The ship lifted off, cutting through the night sky, leaving behind the city that had been both home and prison. The flight, once the ship reached open space, Virel allowed herself a moment of relief. She turned to Elias. "You fought well tonight," she said, her voice filled with quiet admiration. "You taught me something," he replied. "You risked everything for someone who doesn't belong to your world. And you taught me," she said softly, "that bravery isn't about weapons or titles. It's about will." For the first time, the tension between them shifted into something more personal. They weren't just princess and prisoner, human and alien. They were two beings who had saved each other, physically and in ways that went deeper than words. The stars stretched endlessly before them, silent witnesses to their escape. Virel couldn't help but wonder, what would they find out there beyond the Empire's reach? The aftermath back in Kalor, the palace was in chaos. The council demanded answers, but no one could find the princess or the human. Rumors spread rapidly. "The princess has gone with the human," some shouted. "They are traitors," others cried. But those who had seen the fight in the arena, and those who had quietly admired Elias Ward's skill, began to whisper hope. Meanwhile, aboard the transport ship, Virel and Elias sat across from each other. They were bruised, exhausted, and uncertain of the future. "You could have left me," he said quietly. "I couldn't," she replied. "Not after seeing what you are capable of. Not after seeing what your kind represents." Elias nodded slowly. "Then I guess we're partners now." "Partners," she agreed, her eyes reflecting the stars outside the window. For the first time, they both allowed themselves a moment to breathe, to feel hope instead of fear. The galaxy stretched out before them, vast and unpredictable, and somewhere deep inside, they both knew that this was only the beginning. A new understanding Virel studied Elias in the quiet light of the ship's cabin. He was a warrior, yes, but also something more, a symbol of resilience, a being who fought not for glory, but for survival and for what he believed was right. "I don't think I've ever met anyone like you," she admitted softly. "And I've never met anyone like you," he replied. "Someone willing to risk everything for someone else. Most would have left me to die." Virel looked out at the stars again. Maybe that's what makes the difference between our worlds. He tilted his head. Maybe. Or maybe it's just one person at a time. They sat together in silence, each lost in thought. Outside, the galaxy waited, full of danger and wonder. But inside the ship, a fragile trust had been built. A bond formed not of convenience, but of respect, admiration, and perhaps something deeper. Elias stretched his hands, knuckles bruised but unbroken. "Where to now?" he asked, breaking the silence. Virel smiled faintly, determination in her eyes. "Anywhere the Empire hasn't reached. Anywhere we can learn, train, and prepare. The galaxy is bigger than we imagined, and we cannot run forever. We must be ready." He nodded, and for the first time in a long while, both felt a quiet hope. The spark ignites that night. As the transport ship sped through the void of space, Princess Virel leaned against the wall, thinking about the human beside her. She had seen many warriors, many aliens stronger and faster than she was, but none had moved her as he had. Elias Ward wasn't just a fighter. He was a spark, a challenge to everything she had believed. The stars stretched endlessly in every direction as the transport ship sailed silently through the void. Kalor and the Zytheran Empire were far behind, consumed by chaos and rebellion. For the first time, Princess Virel allowed herself to breathe. She stood at the observation deck, hands resting on the railing. Beside her, Elias Ward watched the stars without speaking. His bruised fists were wrapped, and his face bore the faint marks of recent fights, yet his calm eyes radiated a quiet confidence. "Do you ever get used to this?" she asked softly. "Get used to what?" he replied. "Running," she said. "Being hunted. Knowing the Empire is searching for us." Elias glanced at her, a small smile tugging at his lips. "You never stop running if you want to survive. But you learn to move differently. You learn to fight smarter, not harder. That's what keeps you alive." Virel nodded slowly, feeling the truth of his words. She had thought survival was about power, wealth, and weapons. But Elias had shown her a different way, through courage, strategy, and will, building a new force. For weeks they traveled through uncharted sectors of the galaxy. Everywhere they went, Elias's reputation had preceded him. Stories of the bare-handed humans spread among frontier colonies. Some whispered with fear, others with awe. In one remote system, they encountered a group of alien rebels oppressed by a local tyrant. Virel watched Elias work with precision, teaching the rebels simple combat techniques, encouraging them to rely on their instincts rather than weapons alone. "These people need more than arms," Elias said. "They need confidence. They need to believe they can survive against impossible odds." Virel observed him quietly, impressed by the patience in his approach. He didn't fight for fame or power. He fought to inspire. She joined him in training the rebels, surprising herself with her own skill. Her royal training had been designed to rule, but Elias taught her how to move with instinct, how to anticipate, how to strike without unnecessary effort. Together, they became a force that was more than the sum of their parts, a symbol that courage and humanity could change worlds. A message to the Empire word of their activities inevitably reached the Zytheran Empire. The Council sent fleets to hunt them down, demanding the capture of both the human and the princess. But by the time the fleet arrived, Virel and Elias had already moved again. They left behind a trail of stories. Villages saved, soldiers trained, tyrants overthrown. Everywhere they went, people whispered about the two who fought not for conquest, but for hope. The bare-handed human and the princess, they said. They move like shadows. They teach like legends. They fight like gods. Virel watched from the ship's deck as one planet's populace celebrated their escape from oppression. For the first time, she realized something profound. Power was not in weapons or armies. It was in the courage to stand and fight, even when the odds seemed impossible. The growing bond late one night, in the quiet cabin of the ship, Virel and Elias sat together. The stars outside twinkled like distant fires, and the hum of the ship was the only sound. "You've changed me," she said quietly. "I used to believe the galaxy was about control and strength, but you've shown me there's more." Elias looked at her, eyes calm but intense. "I didn't change you. I just reminded you. What humans already know, that will and courage matter more than pride or power. She smiled faintly, then asked, "Do you ever miss your home?" He looked down, thinking. Sometimes. But my home is wherever I can fight for what's right, wherever I can protect people. That's enough for me now. Varel's gaze softened. And for me? He reached out, gently taking her hand. For you, it's more than survival. It's learning to trust, to fight, to hope. And maybe, it's learning to feel something that matters beyond the Empire. Varel's heart beat faster. The galaxy was vast, dangerous, and uncertain, yet beside this human warrior she felt stronger than ever. The challenge of the Empire. The Zytheran fleets eventually caught up to them in the asteroid fields near the edge of the galaxy. Hundreds of warships appeared, shining like angry stars. The Council demanded surrender, but Elias only smiled. Virel and Elias had spent weeks training a group of alien rebels in guerrilla tactics. Together they were ready. Are you sure about this? Virel asked, tightening her grip on the ship's console. Elias nodded. I don't need to be sure, I need to be willing, that's what counts. The battle began. Zytheran lasers sliced through the dark void, striking asteroids and small rebel ships. But Elias moved like a storm. He directed their small fleet with precision, outmaneuvering larger ships with strategy, instinct, and the ability to predict enemy movements. Virel piloted the lead ship, coordinating with Elias as they struck at key targets. Every attack was precise, every move deliberate. Despite being outnumbered, they defeated the Imperial forces, leaving a clear message. Humans, and those who fight alongside them, cannot be controlled by pride alone. Victory and recognition. After the battle, Virel and Elias landed on a neutral planet to rest. The alien rebels they had trained gathered around, cheering, singing songs of the bare-handed human and the princess who risked everything to save them. Virel felt a warmth she had never known as royalty. Her title no longer mattered. What mattered was what they had accomplished together: hope, courage, and freedom. Elias stood beside her, smiling faintly. You see, he said, strength is not measured by who rules or who kills. It's measured by who inspires, who protects, who dares. She nodded. And you've inspired more than anyone else I've ever known. A new beginning. Months passed. Virel and Elias traveled through the galaxy, training, fighting, and spreading hope. They became legends, whispered in every corner of space as symbols of courage. Stories of the bare-handed human spread faster than fleets or armies, teaching that intelligence, instinct, and courage could overcome even the most powerful enemies. And among those legends there was also a story of trust, respect, and an unspoken bond between a princess and a human warrior. One night, aboard their ship, Virel and Elias watched the twin suns rise over an alien planet. Do you think we've done enough? Virel asked softly. Elias shook his head. No, not enough. There's always more to do, but we've done something important. We've shown them a new way. Virel leaned closer to him. And what about us? He took her hand again. We are more than just survivors now. We are partners. And maybe one day we'll be more than that. She smiled, resting her head on his shoulder. For the first time, she felt completely free. Free from the Empire, free from expectation, free to follow courage wherever it led. The legacy years later, the legend of Elias Ward and Princess Virel became a tale told across the galaxy. Children on distant worlds whispered about the human who fought bare-handed and the alien princess who believed in him. They were remembered, not for titles or armies, but for bravery, ingenuity, and the courage to do what no one else dared. The bare-handed human had shown the galaxy that even the smallest hand, driven by will and heart, could change the course of empires. And the princess who stood beside him learned a truth that would outlast wars, fleets, and even galaxies. True, strength comes not from weapons or pride, but from courage, will, and the bonds we build with those who dare to stand beside us. Virel looked at Elias one last time as the suns rose over a new world. They had survived, they had fought, and they had inspired. The galaxy was vast, dangerous, uncertain, but together they were unstoppable.